Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, some of the stories on our show inspired college student art, including a vivid image of a bear smashing a clarinet.
It's a very dynamic image that was made from a place of rage, which is kind of out of character for me. I don't usually make rage-filled images.
A Hare Krishna community in West Virginia serves vegetarian food made in 3 sacred kitchens.
There is a 4th kitchen here that you've not heard of.
There's a 4th kitchen, what's that?
Which is the secret kitchen that I think if you taste that food, it's just totally different level of purity, goodness.
And COVID exposed the contempt society has for marginalized people. One author says these folks are anything but passive.
People have always really resented the status of being disposable. They're conscious of it and imagine and fight for a better life.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. The following is an Encore episode. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. We occasionally hear from educators who find ways to work inside Appalachia into their class. In December, the show was tagged in an Instagram post by West Virginia University professor of art Joseph Lupo. The post showcased 4-color reductive relief prints made by WVU students, each one inspired by a story or episode they heard on Inside Appalachia. I spoke with 3 of Lupo's students and asked them to describe their work and its connection to the show. But first, I asked Lupo to explain the assignment he gave his class.
So the project was that students had to listen to an episode of Inside Appalachia, and then sort of the main theme of that segment became the center point of the inspiration, right? And from there, then we started to talk about ideas about how to integrate that inspiration into their work and into their imagery. So the idea was how to find something outside of the students to get inspired by. You know, the thing that I talk about briefly with this specific project is that whether students grew up in Appalachia or not, they are in Appalachia now. So it just made sense as an interesting way of getting students to think about place and think about how their lives are affected by where they live.
Let's hear from your students about how they took on the assignment. And I'll let you all introduce yourselves.
My name is Brenna Sheldon. I'm currently a senior ceramics major here at West Virginia University. I don't remember exactly what the episode was that I had listened to, but I know what it was about. It was basically referencing how friends of coal and how politicians, especially in this region and this state, like to say that they're friends of coal, but they don't actually care about the coal miners. My piece, I titled it "The Price You Pay." It depicts your generic run-of-the-mill white old politician guy holding up a cage with 2 miners and a canary. And he's smiling and he's presenting it like it's a nice little trophy, like an infomercial. It's like, buy now. And the miners are dressed in yellow to insinuate that they are also canaries and that they are the price that you are paying for your coal. And I'm from this region and I grew up before moving out at age 7 and then coming back. Being from this region, especially this area, the issue of coal miners and coal in general is very near and dear to me. Choosing that topic was an obvious for me.
Yeah, I love this piece. It was one of those that struck me. Man, it's an eye-popping piece. And that piece was from my interview with Leanne Ray, who's the editor of West Virginia Watch. You basically talked about everything that I was going to ask. What else do you want to say?
Support the arts, I guess. I don't know. Support the arts, support local.
Schools.
Yeah, fully fund your public schools, support your arts, support your artists, shop local.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brenna. Who'd like to go next? Would you mind introducing yourself?
My name's Maisie Montañez. I am a junior art education major with an emphasis in sculpture here at West Virginia University.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at your print here on the screen. Can you say what the name is and sort of describe it?
Yeah, it's called Mona Making Lumpia. It's my mom. So it's a imagery of an Asian lady. She's making lumpia, which is a very like popular Filipino dish. It's kind of like if you think of like spring rolls, it's like that, but I feel like it's like the outside is thinner and like crispier. And usually it has like meat and vegetables in it. And then I have the Filipino flag kind of dissected as the border. And so I split the sun in half that's on the flag and then the two like colors of the flag on each side. So blue and red.
It's interesting you have that sculpture background because looking at this image, I can almost feel that, right? It almost feels a little bit like a sculpture with the way your mom's hand is in the foreground and the way she's shaping this dish, but it feels sculpture-ish to me, even though it's a two-dimensional print. How did Inside Appalachia play into it? What story did you hear and how did that affect the end product?
It was Hare Krishna kitchens in West Virginia, soul food, and a musician's call to arms. The two main things that really called out to me was the soul food aspect, and then also like hearing the podcast talk about like the culture of like the kitchen, how like it was very like spiritual for them, and like how they did everything a certain way and like kept everything fresh and used specific utensils for like specific things. And then for the soul food part, I forgot his name, but he was talking about his story. I think he was teaching like his niece or one of his family members how to like cook very important foods in their family, and like hearing him like speak about that and like how it's so important to like their traditions and their culture. It reminded me of my mom and like what kind of foods we made growing up and how she's brought that love for like cooking down to me. I've always lived in West Virginia, but I think my idea of Appalachia is a little bit different than most since my mom immigrated from the Philippines here. And so I know her culture, not a lot of like West Virginia culture. I feel like I was introduced to that through my peers, like school and stuff. And so, like, even growing up, sometimes I felt like I had a hard time connecting with other people because I just knew I lived a different life, I guess, than other people. But again, like at the end, I feel like these little things like food really connects everyone. Like no matter where you come from, like people love to eat and it always brings people together. Like and so yeah, I guess that's like the main ideas behind this piece.
To my mind, that's the story of Appalachia is immigrants who come in and bring their culture here with them and it becomes part of the whole, really. That's like the whole melting pot idea in America. I appreciate hearing that story and your experience because to me, that's quintessentially Appalachian from my perspective. So what else do you want to say?
I love my mom. Shout out to Mona.
And I mean, this picture is this print is so evocative. And I'm glad you called out the flag because that was an element that I did not pick up. You can feel the humanity in this and the richness and the motherliness of it all. She looks very much like a mom making food.
I wanted to make something really special for her, and like the flag was especially important to me because we have matching sun tattoos from the flag, and so I just knew like I gifted this to her and she like sobbed. She loved it for her birthday.
Oh, very cool. I love that. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'd love to speak to the third person. Do you mind introducing yourself? Say your name and a little bit about who you are.
I'm Megan Starrett. I am a third year at WVU. This is my first year. So this is actually my first printmaking class, but I'm going to continue doing printmaking after this semester.
Would you mind saying the name of your relief print? And can you kind of describe it for our listeners a little bit?
It's called Bearing the Thought of Being Disposable, and the image is a angry bear baring its teeth, and it has a paw like smashing my instrument, a clarinet. There's like a lot of chatter, and it's a very dynamic image that was made from a place of rage, which is kind of out of character for me. I don't usually make like rage-filled images, or like my art doesn't usually speak to like that side of my emotion. It usually comes from like I usually have a lot softer pieces that are a lot more like I get Children's Illustrator a lot from my work. But yeah, this came from a place of rage. It was inspired by the episode called Disability in Appalachia, like COVID-19 in Appalachia, Disposability. That was something that was very powerful to me because COVID-19 and disability in general has affected my family very heavily, and including myself, because of COVID-19 and complications that I've had from long COVID. I had to quit marching band, which is where the imagery of the clarinet comes in. I kind of lost my ability to play music in a way that I love doing. I was in the marching band here at WVU, and it's a lot of the reason why I decided to come to WVU is because I love the marching band here so much. And it's something that my sister was a part of, and I really wanted to continue that legacy. I'm grateful that I was able to have 2 years in the band, but it was also something that I kind of grieved when I left and when I had to quit because of complications from my disability. I started fainting, so I couldn't safely be on the field. And just in general, like the way that COVID-19 and disability has impacted my family, I have, multiple family members who have cancer. So it's just when people choose not to mask or not to be vaccinated, people who decide to come to class infected, even though they know they're infected, those things are a really big deal to me because it's something that I could bring back to my family and put them at risk even further than they already are at risk.
Yeah, this is a really powerful piece. You've got this greenery, but this bear is emerging from this greenery and just smashing this instrument. I thought at first it was a train car at the bottom, but it makes sense given your story about long COVID and how it affected your ability to participate in the marching band. It's a very striking, powerful image. I think the episode you talked about included my interview with Sarah Jones, who was from Washington County, Virginia. Sarah's book, Disposable, talks about the societal inequities and how the COVID-19 pandemic really brought them to the fore. What else do you want to say?
Don't go out when you're infected and wear your mask and get vaccinated.
Well, Joe, Maisie, Brenna, Megan, thank you all so much for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you, Mason. This was fantastic. Thanks for taking time to speak with us.
That was WVU Professor of Art Joseph Lupo and students Megan Sterrett, Maisie Montañez, and Brenna Sheldon. To check out their art prints inspired by episodes of Inside Appalachia, visit our website, wvpublic.org. We've posted a link to their work on Instagram. Later in the show, we'll share some of the interviews and stories behind those art prints. That's after the break. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Spend your summer in Charleston, where scenic trails and on-the-water adventure meet vibrant arts, culture, and local flavor in the capital city. Begin your adventure at charlestonwv.com.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm supposed to meet, I know Radha. I know her husband's in there.
Okay.
New Vrindaban is a Hare Krishna community in West Virginia's northern panhandle. It started in the late 60s and is home to a few hundred permanent residents, but thousands of pilgrims visit each year. They come to worship in the temple and to visit the opulent Palace of Gold. But those main attractions were a pretty small part of Folkways reporter Zach Harold's trip. He ended up spending most of his time in the kitchen.
3 different kitchens, actually. This originally started as a feature piece on Govinda's, the restaurant here in New Vrindaban. I thought, Indian-inspired vegetarian restaurant in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, got to be a story there somewhere. But as I learned more, I found there was more to this than just a restaurant. It turns out that food is central to the Hare Krishna faith, its traditions and worship. And Govinda's is just one part of that.
because everything we do everything with food. We cannot have a program without food on the table.
That's Vasudev, who runs Govinda's.
So that's why they call us the kitchen religion.
So what started as a story about a restaurant turned into a story about 3 different kitchens here in New Vrindavan, each of which a little more sacred than the last.
The restaurant kitchen.
You can't really tell from the sound of it, but the cooks here at Govinda's are deep into prep for the lunch rush. Cooks are swarming around, stirring pots and chopping vegetables. There is a small TV in the corner playing Indian ragas. But there's no idle chit-chat at all, because the kitchen staff is trying to keep their minds on God.
Whatever consciousness you have when you're preparing something, is that going to be translated into the food. And any energy that is in the food is going to go to people as well. So if you're cooking in a happy state, in a God consciousness state, people who is eating that are going to get the benefit.
Vasu comes from a big Italian Catholic family in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So the kitchens he grew up in were anything but quiet. When he joined the International Society of Krishna Consciousness in college, he noticed Hare Krishna cooks did things a little differently. And it wasn't just about the volume level.
And I remember the cooks, while they're cooking, they taste them, They taste and see, I say, okay, let me taste the salt, let me see, how spicy it is, But here we don't do that.
You'll never see a cook in this restaurant tasting a sauce or even wafting the smell of a dish up to their nose.
We offer to God, to Krishna, and then we'll taste it. When we're preparing something, we're preparing with a consciousness that we're offering this to God.
Before human tongue tastes any of the food prepared here, one of the cooks will present samples of each dish before a small altar set up on top of one of the kitchen's coolers. The cook will then chant a mantra and ring a bell. They wait a few minutes, and then everyone else can enjoy the food as well.
And then by doing that, you get the blessings. And then when you eat that, your body is not only get the nutrients that your body needs, but also the spiritual benefit as well.
Govinda serves up a lot of this spiritually infused food, providing lunch and dinner to the dozens of pilgrims who visit each week. Much of the menu is Indian-inspired, and in keeping with Hare Krishna dietary restrictions, Govinda's serves only vegetarian food. It's a lot of healthy grains and legumes, like rice and lentils, and lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness actually runs the largest vegetarian food distribution program in the world. It's called Food for Life, and it was born from an experience Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, the movement's founder, had when he was trying to build another temple in Mayapur, India. Prabhupada and his followers had cooked rice for the people there, serving it on leaves. After they were done, they threw those leaves into a pile.
And I saw some kid looking into the trash for some food.
In some tellings of the story, children had to fight stray dogs for the food.
And he said, that's no good. So any person who lives around 10 miles to the temple should be fed by that. So out of that, a program called Food for Life was born. And right now it's all around the world.
That's why, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, New Vrindavan provides a free breakfast and lunch to anyone who wants a seat at the table, whether you're a resident, a pilgrim, or just somebody who wants a meal. But that food does not come from Govinda's. To see where those meals are prepared, you've got to head next door to the temple, to the second of New Vrindavan's kitchens.
The devotee kitchen.
When Sachi Sutta gets up in the morning, usually around 4, he showers to make himself ritually clean and heads down to the temple to pray.
And we chant like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we chant that mantra, then we keep ourselves pure, then come to kitchen.
Sachi runs New Vrindavan's devotee kitchen. Each day he consults with the temple president to see how many pilgrims stayed the night in the community's lodge. Add to that any new cars that might be in the parking lot, and any full-time residents who might come down to the temple to eat.
Today we're cooking almost 120 people because today not many visitor to breakfast, and we cooking lunch almost 150 people.
That's a big crowd. Luckily, Sachi has a good bit of help. Just before daybreak, a parade of volunteers files into the devotee kitchen. They slip on some hairnets, and with a little instruction from Sachi, they set to work.
Make something, sweet and, very fluffy bread.
Devotees wash potatoes and chop pineapples, quarter oranges, and dice jalapenos for curries, salads, and quinoa. Though the kitchen does get vegetables delivered from a local grower and uses some store-bought ingredients, Sachi also uses lots of vegetables grown on the property, as well as milk from the community's cows and dairy products like ghee and yogurt made from that milk. The volunteer cooks remain quiet while they work, just like the cooks in the restaurant kitchen, except for when a big goofy guy sticks a microphone in their face while they're mashing bananas for Sachi's special buckwheat banana bread.
Have you ever made this before?
No, first time.
You're doing great.
I hope.
What's your name?
That's Anabuth, a devotee from Pennsylvania. He drove down today to spend his birthday at the temple. Today's volunteers come from all over: Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Michigan, Toronto, Canada. They've driven for hours and hours just to spend a few days here in the mountains. And Sachi said that's common. Devotees come to New Vrindavan from everywhere. People who can't make it to the holy places in India are able to come here and receive the same spiritual benefit.
That gets same benefit in the India, whatever get that. That's why everybody come here.
So it's no wonder that while these pilgrims are here, they're more than happy to roll up their sleeves and help out in the kitchen. When the food's done, Sachi plates a little sample of each dish into a small aluminum bowl. Those bowls go onto a 12-inch aluminum platter, which is placed before some fresh flowers and images of Krishna, his consort Radha, and Prabhupada. Then Sachi offers the food to Krishna with the ringing of a bell and the chanting of the mantra. Sachi and his rotating kitchen crew go through this routine 730 times a year. But there are some jobs around here that volunteers can't do, aren't allowed to do. Just down the hall from the devotee kitchen, behind a closed but unassuming door, is another kitchen. Normally, only the most committed devotees are allowed inside. But they made an exception for us, so I could take you into the kitchen where God's food is prepared.
The deity kitchen.
The cooks in New Vrindavan's restaurant and devotee kitchens try to use the best ingredients in their cooking. But here, everything is held to a higher standard.
Except for like olive oil and lemon juice, you won't find like anything like canned or preserved in here.
That's Anuradha M. Singh, the communications director.
Everything is made fresh. Like they make fresh cheese every single day.
And it's not just the ingredients. The pots, pans, and utensils used in the deity kitchen are used here and nowhere else. They don't even share a dishwasher with stuff from the other kitchens. Instead of the stainless steel serving dishes used in the restaurant and devotee kitchens to offer the food to Krishna, here he dines from serving dishes made of pure silver. Everything is set aside for God, including the chef.
The idea is meditating Krishna. Everything you're doing is offered for Krishna. No? I'm very happy cooking for that deity. Yeah.
Rohini Kumar is from Peru. He's known as a twice-initiated devotee. He's taken additional vows to the faith and, as such, has a special mantra that he chants 3 times a day. That allows him to prepare food for Krishna in this sanctified kitchen space.
No, every day coming, I see different vegetables. No have menu for day. No?
You let the ingredients tell you what to cook.
Yeah.
He gets a fruit salad, he gets like a little savory curry, and he might get like, a puri, like some kind of bread, some kind of Indian bread.
Once everything was ready, Rohini transferred the food to those silver serving dishes. All plated up, it looks like an appetizer platter that someone ordered as their lunch. And now, it's ready for the table. A Hare Krishna temple service is a multi-sensory experience. There's the sound of conch shells, drumming, cymbals, chanting, and singing. The smell of incense fills your nose, and the shrine itself is visually overwhelming, with intricate wood and metalwork, stained glass, and paintings. It's in this setting that devotees make a series of offerings. They change the clothes on the images of Krishna and his consort Radha, removing their pajamas and putting on their day clothes. They wake up the deities with good morning prayers and small pieces of milk candy prepared in the deity kitchen. They offer fresh flowers and the elements of earth, wind, fire, and water. And then they offer the food Rohini prepared.
So she basically used that tray. She's inviting them to come and sit with her hands, right?
Once the food is offered, devotees leave the plates there for a short while so Krishna and Radha can enjoy it. Then a devotee takes the food back into the kitchen area where it is transferred out of the holy dishes and into less sanctified food containers. Then it can be eaten by anyone.
It becomes a really intensely sanctified food. Like it's called Maha Prasadam. Prasadam just means sanctified food, and Maha means great. So this means like the greatest.
Do the priests get to eat this?
Well, everyone gets to eat it. Yeah, meaning like whoever gets there first gets to eat it, right?
On nice days, the community dines outdoors on picnic tables in front of the temple. There's also a dining hall, and that's where Anurada and I ate for recording purposes.
Okay, so I suggest you try these first, like the ones that were made. So this is from the kitchen. Okay. This, and this is from the kitchen, right?
From the devotee kitchen, there was a vegetable curry, some quinoa, and the buckwheat banana bread Sachi was making. From the deity kitchen, I had an extra sanctified potato pancake, some of those milk candies offered to Krishna as a morning snack, and paneer cheese. I'm not sure I could pick up on the spiritual side of it, but you can tell this food was made with quality ingredients and a lot of care and attention. After we finished breakfast, I noticed some other folks in the dining hall. Raghavacharya Das and his wife Mansi and their 2 children. We struck up a conversation, and I discovered the family only moved here 3 months ago. They came from Silicon Valley, where she was a research scientist at Stanford, and he worked at a financial technology startup. Now, they're full-time devotees.
So when you are here, you'll also observe it. There is something here. It attracts you back.
As I was explaining the premise of the story I was reporting, Raghavacharya said something that shocked me, as you can hear from the tape.
There is a 4th kitchen here that you've not heard of.
There's a 4th kitchen. What's that?
Which is the secret kitchen that, I think if you taste that food, it's just totally different level of purity, goodness.
I asked if he could show me this secret kitchen, but he said I didn't quite understand what he meant. This 4th kitchen doesn't stay in one place.
It's not like a kitchen that you can go and see. It is devotees who are cooking for senior disciples who live but are really old and not able to cook for themselves. And that preparation, different devotees do it on a rotation basis in their own in their homes. And that food, if you see, it's prepared just with love. There is no other motivation, nothing.
There is a kitchen garden here. They grow vegetables over there, and they're organic vegetables grown in this land, so really potent. So we get those vegetables for them. We don't just get any vegetable from supermarkets. And then those are also simple squashes, beans, and just cooked in ghee. That's it, ghee and love.
As Mansi was explaining how the community prepares food in this secret 4th kitchen, I thought it sounded an awful lot like the way Rohini goes about making food for Krishna in the deity kitchen. But then, I guess cooking simple, filling meals with wholesome, healthy ingredients for the most vulnerable people in your community, food made with ghee and love, and doing that behind the scenes without any recognition or praise, even if that's not done within the 4 walls of a temple, I don't think you're going to find food much more sacred than that. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold in New Vrindavan, West Virginia.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more Folkways stories at our website, wvpublic.org. More than 1 million Americans have died from COVID-19. Some groups of folks died at much higher rates than others, and those deaths tended to follow lines of race, class, age, and disability. In other words, conditions that were already making life harder for some people played out during the pandemic too. Last year I spoke with reporter Sarah Jones about her book, Disposable: America's Contempt for the Underclass. Sarah Jones, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia.
Thanks for having me.
So Disposable unpacks how systemic inequities in the U.S. played out during COVID-19. And you start the book with a couple of anecdotes, but pretty quickly pivot to your own family. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your pandemic experience?
Absolutely. In 2020, I was working on a lot of labor and workplace stories for New York Magazine, just trying to get a handle on how COVID was affecting people who were working for Amazon, people who were working on grocery stores, like people who were really on the front lines of the pandemic. And then, I was in the process of doing that when, unfortunately, my grandfather, who lived in Damascus, Virginia at the time, contracted COVID when he was in a rehab facility and unfortunately ended up passing away from the virus. It was sort of the combination of those two events. COVID, talking to folks who were trying to protect themselves and their families while making ends meet during COVID, and then, my grandfather dying from COVID in a way that made me wonder if it could have been prevented, right? If we could have afforded care for him at home, would he have been safer? And it just got me thinking about his own life, as he's a working class person from Maine who moved down to Washington County, Virginia to be with us as he got older, and just the circumstances of his life and how that may have made him vulnerable to COVID infection in ways that were not identical, but sort of overlapped a little bit with what I was hearing from other folks at the time. And that was really the impetus for writing the book in the first place. Just thinking about a death like my grandfather's is obviously a tragedy for my family, but it's also political, I felt, in a very real way. And I wanted to really dig into the vulnerabilities that I was seeing and treating them not as naturally occurring phenomenon, but the result of political choices that this country's been making for a very long time.
Well, you've spent years writing about class disparities in America for Scalawag, for the New Republic, and now New York. And the pandemic seemed like a point where the rubber really hit the road on that. And you explore that in Disposable. When you got into reporting this book, what did you find about how the pandemic exposed class lines in the U.S.?
One thing that I really wanted to get across in the book is that the American workplace has often been dangerous over the years. For me, particularly as someone who grew up in Southwest Virginia, that was something I was acutely aware of, not just from growing up there, but from reading about the history of organized labor in the region. And if you do that, then workplace safety has life or death stakes attached to it, and organizing against those circumstances can have life or death stakes attached to it. And so that was on my mind when COVID hit. And then, when I started writing the book, I really wanted to situate the events of COVID in that longer history. And really, where I think the facts take us is sort of this conclusion that, no one is responsible for COVID existing or happening. If it wasn't COVID, I think it would have been a different virus. But what happened during COVID, the way we reacted to COVID, and what made us vulnerable as a society to certain events during COVID, those were all human choices, and that to me could have been prevented.
You alluded to your background in Southwestern Virginia, but how did your childhood growing up in Appalachia shape your approach to reporting this book?
Yeah, it had a big influence in a way that I wish there was I didn't want the book to be a memoir, although there is, my family's experiences do appear in it. But growing up where I did, and specifically learning about the history of the region when I was a little bit older, when I was a young adult, was really important. Not just reading about labor, but sort of observations you have as a kid, right? Okay, my family is struggling and a lot of the families around us are struggling. And then you get a little bit older and you realize people who don't live in this area have all kinds of ideas about people who do and why so many of us might be poor or working class. And I wanted to sort of understand why that was the situation. And I wanted to understand what could be done about that situation. And so I was kind of going through that when I was in my early to mid 20s. And then, I always had an interest in journalism, but it really shaped my interest in journalism because I was curious about it. And, I'm not an academic, but this seemed like a way to sort of investigate the problem. When I thought about the stories I wanted to tell and what interested me and what my approach to covering politics was perhaps going to be, I didn't really want to be a White House correspondent. I wanted to talk to regular people. So it had a huge influence on me. And then going into COVID and writing this book, it was very much present for me and something I thought about a lot.
Disposable is a pretty damning indictment of the society in which we live, and it really sort of comprehensively explores inequities in a variety of realms that touch every aspect of our lives, from healthcare to elder care to differences in race. There's a chapter on how the political class has exploited and made this even worse. A lot of this seems really hard-baked into our society and culture and economy. Do you have some ideas for how we can overcome some of these issues?
Yeah, that's something that was certainly on my mind, and particularly in sort of the concluding chapter of the book. I didn't want to leave people on doom and gloom. I wanted to think about what could be different, because for me, pointing out what's wrong is really half the story. And it's important to identify these cracks in our society and how they got there, and maybe, the forces that are responsible for putting them there and the people who are responsible for putting them there. But we don't just do it to sort of point fingers, right? I mean, if you're doing that, the hope is that we could do something about it. And so when I was writing the book and in my own life and my work as a reporter, I knew very well that the people I write about as being disposable are not passive people at all. They've always organized. They've always fought. They, whether it was labor organizing, whether it was the civil rights movement or feminism or the welfare rights movement, or I write about the disability rights movement as well. People have always really resented the status of being disposable. They're conscious of it and imagine and fight for a better life. And so, although I'm not like an organizer myself, I'm a journalist and I want to be humble about my limitations there. I wanted to include those stories so we can kind of look at what people have done in the past and think about ways that can inform what we're doing now. And when I was writing the concluding chapter of the book, I write about this notion of solidarity, which I don't think is a panacea necessarily, but is, I think, really key and really important to sort of fighting back against what I see as a status quo that encourages a certain level of acceptance of preventable and unnecessary death in this country. And what does it mean to feel solidarity with people, and how do you act on that? I think can be really subversive in a meaningful way. And I think that's just become more important now when you look at the political climate in this country at the moment.
Yeah, so speaking of the political climate in this country at the moment, COVID is still killing people, but a lot of people are eager to put the pandemic in the rear view. And some people, deny it ever happened. So when you look at the country now in 2025, what's changed since you were reporting your book? Where are we at now?
Yeah. This amnesia that I write about in the book is something that I still wrestle with, and something that I know my sources still wrestle with when they think about the people they've lost and how they lost them and why they lost them, and sort of the reactions they've encountered by relatives, friends who might say, well, your mom was overweight and that's why she died from COVID. And it has nothing to do with anything else, whether somebody was masking or unvaccinated, forget that. Kind of a refusal to sort of reckon with not only the reasons for the mass death, but also the consequences. I keep asking myself why that is. And, I wrote the book before Donald Trump was reelected. Sort of now looking back with the benefit of hindsight, it does seem to me that we are sort of incentivized to move on and not wrestle with it or reckon with it in a way, because as I write in the book, really reckoning with it is not just this act of memory, or thinking about the deceased. It's taking active steps toward remaking the political climate in this country in a way where, should there be another virus, this isn't going to happen in the same way. And, a society where people aren't disposable at all might be a more robust and more resilient society when natural disaster does happen. And we're just not there. And as a political reporter, I've spent a lot of time thinking about why that is, but also kind of the roots of Donald Trump's appeal and how those two trends might overlap with each other. And, I think it's pretty clear from the polling and from what's been reported that, Trump was able to promise people in a persuasive way that he was going to bring jobs, he was going to bring prosperity, he was going to bring security. People believed that because many of them don't have it. And we saw him make inroads with new groups of people, new demographics kind of based on that appeal. And I think that that's something that is not solely due to the pandemic or what happened during the pandemic, but I think you're hard-pressed to argue that it had no influence at all.
Sarah Jones, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Sarah Jones is a writer for New York Magazine. Her book is Disposable: America's Contempt for the Underclass. It's available from Simon & Schuster. The Trump administration has slashed federal jobs and loosened energy production regulations, and delayed a Biden-era rule to protect miners against silica dust, which contributes to black lung disease. Last April, we spoke with Leanne Ray, the editor-in-chief of the nonprofit news outlet West Virginia Watch, about an editorial she wrote. Your op-ed piece in West Virginia Watch is headlined, "It's time for West Virginia leaders to be friends of coal miners, not coal." That headline's a play on Friends of Coal, a 501c6 nonprofit trade group for the coal industry. And of course, a lot of people know it more from its stickers than its work behind the scene. You make the case that elected officials go out of their way to be, quote, friends of coal. What do you mean by that?
Well, to be honest with you, you were talking about the bumper stickers. That's all I knew from Friends of Coal, seeing that sticker growing up. And I actually didn't know what it meant. I had to look it up when I was writing this commentary to find out that it was actually a nonprofit group. But yeah, West Virginia's elected officials, they always talk about how they want to help coal. They turn their noses at renewable energy like solar and wind power. They see no problem with loosening environmental regulations, even though those regulations are there to protect West Virginians' health in order to allow more coal to be mined. Right now, in the West Virginia State Legislature, they're talking about a bill to create microgrids to power data centers. In the initial version of the bill requested by Governor Morrisey, there are provisions meant to support the state's coal industry. I believe it said it would have required electric utilities with coal-fired plants to operate at like a 69% capacity and hold a 45-day supply of coal on hand at all times. It turns out most coal-fired plants in the state operate on an average of 40% capacity and stockpile a 30-day supply of coal. The power companies have said in response to that it'd be difficult to meet those standards, and doing so would have raised rates for existing electric customers in the state. West Virginians are already struggling with utility rates. We hear about Appalachian Power wanting to raise their rates all the time, and honestly, West Virginians, they can't afford another rate hike, especially one just to help the coal industry.
Partway through your op-ed, you flipped this idea of politicians being friends of coal. I'm going to read a quote here. They say they want to stand up for coal. In reality, they're only standing up for coal mine owners to have less regulations so they can make more money. And let's be honest, coal mine owners in West Virginia show all the time they don't care about coal miners. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. The two biggest examples of this are Don Blankenship and Jim Justice. Blankenship was the CEO of Massey Energy at the time of the Upper Big Branch mine disaster, where 29 miners died. After that accident, MSHA issued Massey 369 citations and orders, including an unprecedented 21 flagrant violations, which carry the most serious civil penalties under the law. When Blankenship appeared on HG Media's Outside the Echo Chamber a couple years ago in a now-deleted episode, the host asked him, if you had done anything differently that day, what would you have done? He said he would have quit before the disaster, not that he would have fixed any of the safety issues or done anything to prevent the accident. He would have only saved himself, not those 29 men. That, to me, is someone who obviously does not care about his coal miners. He cares about the money and himself. And then our Senator Jim Justice, he has a long history of not paying mine safety fines. His family owns nearly 24 coal companies, and they owe more than $400,000 in delinquent mine safety fines that they racked up between 2014 and 2019. And last year, his family agreed to pay those fines. And this year they said, no, for real this time, we're going to pay those. And they've agreed to pay it by May 1st, I think. To rack up that much money when they originally owed over $5 million debt in a delinquent mine safety fines, that's a lot of safety violations. If you cared about your miners and your employees, you would be fixing these issues and not racking up more and more fines.
So since President Trump took office, his administration has announced it's closing 33 mine safety and health administration offices. It's fired hundreds of workers at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which conducts black lung research and screening, and just this week announced it was going to delay the implementation of a rule intended to crack down on silica dust, which is a contributing factor to black lung. At the same time, Trump also has signed 4 executive orders intended to prop up coal-fired power plants and coal production. So what does this all mean for the coal industry in West Virginia and for its miners?
Well, it might lead to more coal production, but it's going to leave miners much more vulnerable. NIOSH out of Morgantown did free and mobile black lung testing across Appalachia, and talking to the union representative there, it sounds like everyone at NIOSH is going to be done by June, so that mobile testing unit is gone. The union official also told West Virginia Watch that there's no one else in government who does occupational safety and health, and they do the research to make everyone's jobs safer, so it's just going to leave coal miners in just a much more vulnerable position. Capito, Justice, and Miller, they all put out press releases saying they supported Trump's executive orders that are meant to revive the coal production. One of those orders removed Biden's administration's environmental regulations because Trump said it slows the approval of new mining projects. Well, yeah, that's for health and safety of everyone. It should slow it down. You should be looking at, if you mine in this area, how is it going to affect the neighborhoods nearby? How is it going to affect the water? You want to slow that down. You don't want to just open up mine production somewhere where it can hurt the environment and people. And then another one of his executive orders directed the U.S. Justice Department to block states from enforcing their own regulations on coal. This administration, they already show they don't really seem to care about the environment or people's health, so it could lead to many more mine disasters like Upper Big Branch, obviously more cases of black lung. With the silica dust rule being delayed, that was something that was really going to help take down the number of black lung cases. And we don't have that free mobile unit anymore. People aren't going to know. I don't know other than the mobile unit if they're going out on their own. I know personally for me, if I think something's wrong with my health, I might put it off. I might not want to go. And I could see people like that being like, oh, I don't want to know. I'm fine. And when they had that free mobile unit coming, that was something where they could go and get tested. And now that's something that's just not going to exist anymore.
So when you say leaders should be friends of coal miners, not coal, what do you envision for that? What does that mean for elected officials in Congress and beyond?
People seem to think that they can only do one thing. They can only support the production of coal. But they can do that at the same time of supporting coal miners. I honestly think that all of our delegation, they need to kind of grow a backbone and say, we need to take care of our coal miners. These brave people are going in these mines, risking their lives every day. We need to do everything we can to make sure there are regulations to keep them safe, that there's research that can help them with things with black lung, that they're being tested. Actually, Senator Capito, she did speak out about the cuts at NIOSH, and she was the only one. I didn't hear anything from Miller or Moore or Justice. I understand our lawmakers think coal's the past and the present and the future of West Virginia, but it's a fossil fuel. It's non-renewable. Once it's gone, it's gone. They can promote the production of coal and at the same time fight for the safety of our miners. There's no reason that they can't do both. I can't see Justice doing that as a coal mine owner, but honestly, he should be the one saying, we got to take care of our coal miners. We got to make sure that there are safety regulations out there for them. They're in there mining this coal that's helping with our industry. They always say coal keeps the lights on. They're getting this coal to keep our lights on. We need to be making sure we're doing everything for them to make sure that they're safe and that they're healthy.
Leanne Ray, thank you for coming on to speak with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Leanne Ray is editor-in-chief of West Virginia Watch. For a transcript of our conversation, visit our website, wvpublic.org. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Tim Bing, Frank George, Blue Dot Sessions, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @inappalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/insideappalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.